he showed beyond the shadow of a doubt that we as a people, in fact, I wrote something about that, but before I read that to you, I want to again give greetings to everyone, Pastor Barrett, Sister Elmer, the ministry staff, the praise team, and the members in attendance and at home. Also, last but not least, my honey. This statement begins. It was our ancestors, people who look and act like us, who were the first and original people on this earth. We were first and we will be the last. It was they then who were divinely, supremely, supernaturally, omnipotently, omnisciently, omnipresently, every word, every thought, every idea, every deed, as it relates to in any and every concept of God ever given by any name used. With the program, you saw how they more or less whitewashed everything. You saw where they even took certain passages out of the Bible that related to us being forceful, us being warriors, us being rebellious. The story of Moses leaving Egypt in and of itself, that was a battle. But there are a lot of other things in history that have been changed and covered up. And I'll do some secular things first. How many of you like Roots? Was a great program, wasn't it? In fact, if you remember, for those of you who were alive then, it was released in this month, in February. It was so cold. But a funny thing happened on the way to the facts of that story. As you remember, Alex Haley also wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X. Somewhere along the way, Alex Haley had a problem with something. It's called plagiarism. Because as you looked and as you read and as you found out, Alex Haley stole big parts of the book called Jubilee by Alice Walker and big parts of a book called The Old African. I don't remember the author of that. And he used those stories to write his story about Kunta Kinte. Now, the only thing that might be true in his story is the fact that Kunta Kinte was his relative. But the meat and juice and body of the story, well, he stole from other people. In fact, Pastor, I don't know if you know this, but about 4 or 5 years ago, they also exposed that they found 4 chapters of the autobiography of Malcolm X that he did not publish and put in the book. And his daughter, there was a storage that his daughter had, and they went in it and they found. So some people say Alex might have been an agent provocateur with the CIA or so, I don't know, he could have been. But here's another story that you might be able to relate to. President's Day was last Monday, correct? And for you history buffs out there, the 12th was Lincoln's birthday, and whose birthday is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. Now, you correct. I'm sorry, I did not acknowledge that you didn't hear me yet, definitely. Very famous black historian by the name of J.A. Rogers, Joel Anthony Rogers, wrote this book back in 1965, and the name of it was The 5 Negro Presidents According to What White People Said They Were. That is the title of the book. And without going into a whole bunch of details, these are the 5 black presidents that we had prior to number 44. Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, but this one you probably figured out already, Abraham Lincoln, Warren G. Harding, and Calvin Coolidge. In fact, some people even say Dwight D. Eisenhower had African American lineage, but you know, they deny it all as usual. So, people my age, I think, like cowboys and Indian stories and all kinds of stuff along that lines. Shoot 'em up was, growing up, our favorite. Yeah, the Rifleman, hey, Chuck Connors, of course. Pow, 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 pow. Okay. But my all-time favorite was, Pastor probably know, my other brothers probably know, The Lone Ranger. Found out later that was the William Tell Overture. So, but anyway, and his story was really unique. Here is a Texas Ranger who was ambushed, almost died. This Indian came that he knew from when he was younger, saved him, and he said that he didn't want anybody to know he survived, so he started wearing a mask and went all over Texas and started catching bad guys. Loved him. The white horse, the silver bullets, the mask, the blue jumpsuit, the whole 9 yards. Loved him. However, I found out maybe about 10 years ago there was somebody by the name of Bass Reeves that a brother by the name of Tad Morgan wrote about, and he, Mr. Bass Reeves, seemed to have a similar story. In fact, I'll give you a little fact about Mr. Reeves. Mr. Reeves, Bass Reeves, was born into slavery in 1838 in Arkansas. And by the time the Civil War started, his master sent him to serve his son in the Civil War as a Confederate soldier. But while he was with his son, he escaped to the Indian territory that we now call Oklahoma. There he hooked up with the brothers, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Seminole, the Creek, and the Choctaw. So he stayed there till 1865 because by that time his cousin Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, so he was free. Okay. So he returned to Arkansas and he married and he had 11 children. In 1875, he became the first U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. He was recruited by U.S. Marshal James Fagan. Now, this is going to blow you totally away, because he did blow people away. Mr. Bass Reeves was known to be a very intelligent man when it came to catching criminals. He used detective work. There's a story where he walked 30 miles to the house of two crooks he was trying to catch. And he was so ragged and haggard, he convinced their mother to take him in. Once he got inside, he handcuffed both of them while they were asleep. And then marched them back to where he was, marched them back 30 miles where he came from. But he was in Texas, so there's your Ranger hookup. It is written and recorded that he arrested more than 3,000 criminals and killed 14 of them. And they said he was quick on the draw. So, Art T. Burton, asserted the theory that Bass Reeves had inspired the Lone Ranger in his 2006 book, Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. He spent 32 years as a deputy U.S. Marshal. Now, it just so happens that the majority of the criminals that he arrested wound up going to a federal prison in Detroit. And it just so happens that on January 30th, 1933, which is, he died, I'm sorry, I give you his living. They don't know what day, but he was born in July 1838 and he died January 12th, 1910, 71 years old. But that day, 23 years after he died, the Lone Ranger debuted on radio in Detroit, Michigan, where many of the criminals he arrested were sent. That commercial, how you like it now? Well, I'm going to end with this one for you. And this, they talk about how great of a lawman he was and how steadfast he was to the law and the truth. Bass Reeves tracked down and looked for his own son who was accused of murdering his wife. He caught his son and arrested his son and sent him to prison, and his son served 11 years, and it is said that after his son got out, he lived a good life. So that's that part of my presentation for you. Mr. Bass Reeves, one of our African-American heroes, who is the inspiration of one of my boyhood heroes. And I'm so glad to find out I really was really involved in Bass Reeves, not the Lone Ranger. But I had to admit now, because, Hopalong Cassidy was up in that too, so. All right, we're switching to the poetry part of my presentation. And I got to do this, so bear with me. Boom ba boo da, ba dee ba da doo da, boom ba da da, boom ba ba da da, ba da doo doo ba, boom ba boo da, ba dee. Poem. Right after I started writing this poem, the news media reported that as a group, an entity, the gross national product of African Americans was estimated at $572 billion. And this was in 2001, so this is an old poem. Ironically, that amount positioned African Americans between Spain and Portugal as having the 12th or 13th largest economy in the world. Torturedly ironic in the sense that these two are the countries that were initially responsible for our transport to this country. Further proof that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And the title of this poem is Reparations. And this was for NCOBRA's 12th annual convention. 1. Our investment. Long fights take a long time. New fights take even longer. Our fight is ever longer, the never-ending kind. The descendants of the survivors of the Middle Passage, the uncommon commodities, now organized to recoup some portion of their shares cropped by the institutions of enslavement peculiar to their harvest of unrest and distress. like a long-lost, newfound, deferred annuity funded by the untold millions of lives lost on the maiden voices of tornado, thunder, and earthquake-eyed with a hurricane tidal wave of 488 years worth of the big payback, how long overdue? Cleansed by the sacrifice of blood, snot, tears, and excrement on the horn altar of disobedient greed and lust, broken trust and disunity, and we wonder why Africa is in the shape it's in. Muted by the mind, body, and spirit screams, splitting the ear of the soul. Screams that won't erase the memories of our initiation of debasement into our fraternal order of America. No allegiance was pledged to us. Screams that won't numb our senses to the accrued interest of slavery's deportment. Bred as the grossest natural product, substandard and poor. Now with a Now Jones indicator of crack, heroin, and girl in ecstasy speed, immediate and forthright fools auctioning off the offspring of king and queen for pleasure and pain, legislative salvations and vetoed messiahs lobbying for money's green. You slurp the vomit of profit from our uppity intestinal crack of unrelenting cruelty, flesh oozing and flowing from the epidermal volcanoes of Milliken's magnetic fecundance, no longer protected by the hearth of the homeland, souls sailing, sitting in ships full of black gold in the sardine hole. Oh. My next poem and the last is, I guess if I ever had one, this would be called my hit poem. But for this poem, I'm going to require each and every one to take out a dollar bill. So you take out a dollar bill, each and every one. In order to read this poem, you got to have a dollar bill. And I know you got a dollar bill somewhere over there. If you don't, you can look on with someone. Or I know your father has some dollar bills, so you can. Dollar bills. I'm sorry. Right here. One of this poem. Everybody got the dollar? There was a time when a dollar was really worth something, wasn't it? Are we ready? Okay, now I want you to turn the dollar bill on the back. Turn your dollar bill to the back. Okay? Focus your attention. The title of this poem is Tenderback. I'm going to really, I guess, to take some stuff out that I usually do because of where I am, but you still get the point. Ready? Ready. Inside the white frame, perimeter web of cold filigree macrame, one-on-one sticks in each corner, $1 low, the United States of America high, serves as the border for the Great Seal lie on a bill of bastardized, conglomerized, misassembled symbols. Follow my tale of sight. Read the circle on the right. See the eagle in full wing flight, cutting 13 arrows in his left talon and olive branch in his right. Shielded chest with green and white crest, protecting a weak heart, designating his class. Ribbon flag, screeching, screaming, he pull up his onum, he pull up his onum, with Ra's pole and or David's star gleaming over his head in a field of glory. You should realize who those 13 stars represent. Middleset, in God we trust one, meaning rather with this God we can buy anyone. It was in God they trusted, but their trust got busted and they were covered with sin, shame, and slime. Because when the images they minted turned sour and vicious, the words got rusted and they couldn't spend a dime. In the depression from 20 to 79, and the one coming will be unsurpassed. Last circle left, the worst of the worst yet. The aduit coeptus time is up. Translated means God has smiled on our undertaking for enslaving, maiming, castrating, raping my father, your father, my mother, your mother, our brothers, our sisters. 1,000,000 upon 1,000,000,000 times, 1,000,000 upon 1,000,000,000 black lives. A 467-year genocide at the time. Meanwhile, the eye of Horus shines above a truncated pyramid with a 1776 foundation, Roman numeralized as you can see. Well now, novus equals new, ordo equals order, seclorum means I ain't gonna tell, you find out. All documented on July 20th, 1789 is God. As a dirty, nasty, crass, crappy, ugly, stinking aghast. Paper wheel, note that was never fulfilled, funky dollar bill. And by the way, don't get caught kneeling, counterfeiting, or stealing. Thank y'all. Now you got to give them all to me.